Are we live? I think we are. I always get confused if we're live, but I think we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Script Writing for Beginners. Sticking to my promise, today's lesson is on exposition, which is an area which I think definitely sorts out the good writers to the bad, the pros to the rookies, the novices to the experts. Um, it's an area which, unfortunately, shouldn't be complicated, and I guess it isn't. It is just noticeable when a writer isn't very good at revealing information, and essentially, all exposition is, it's information being revealed. So, as you can see here, I googled that from the dictionary. An exposition is a noun. It is a comprehensive description and explanation of an idea or theory. Putting that into terms of film or television or theatre, its exposition includes anything from character introductions to set details and dialogue, and is most common at the beginning of the story. Now, firstly, the reason it's usually at the beginning of the story is because, as you can imagine, the you as the audience and the writer wants to make sure that the audience knows where it's set, who's it about, and any rules. Oh, don't say that. And any rules that may have to take place in this world. One of the best examples of exposition in science fiction, which I might do a lesson on that, would be the film Looper. Because it's to do with time travel, you as the writer have to establish what the rules are within this world to do with time travel. Now, obviously, time travel is a theory and there's no set rules, but the writer decided to go, right, in my world, when I'm writing about science fiction and when I'm writing about time travel, this is what's going to happen. In the year 2050, time travel exists, but for every time you use a time travel machine, you have to lose a limb and da 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 da. So what would happen at the start of the film is you would have one character talking to another character about time travel. Now, this is purely done so that the audience knows about the rules of time travel. However, you as the writer have to make sure that what and why the characters are talking about time travel is believable. So you as the audience don't think, well, they're just telling us purely because we need to know this. It has to be a convincing conversation that the characters would have in their real life world, in this world that you as the writer has created, that pushes the story on, gives information to the audience, but doesn't come across. You almost want to gather the information without even realize you're doing it. Equally, you don't always have to reveal information. Audiences aren't as dumb as you as the writer may think. You don't have to fill in the blanks always. It's let the audience guess who that relation to is. If you have a man and a woman, you don't need to say they're husband and wife. You don't. This is the thing. You don't have the man walking in and saying hello, wife, and hello, husband. Visually, you think a man and woman living together, the chances of them being housemates or cousins, etc., are quite slim. What are the chances of them being husband and wife? It's a high percentage. So as soon as they walk in, you as the audience are going to assume that they are husband and wife. You wouldn't have to necessarily act upon that because the assumption alone is good enough to keep the story going. If you want to prove a point that they are, you could have them holding hands and kissing. Therefore, we know that they're in a relationship and therefore should be husband and wife. If you want to say that they're anything but husband and wife, you would have to have a line such as, did you speak to mum? Example. That straight away will show that they aren't husband and wife, but in fact siblings. The mere fact that you have put a line such as, John, did you speak to mum, shows that John is in fact the brother to whatever female character is. If you put, did you speak to Sally, we don't know who Sally is. You then could have it where it's, did you speak to Sally? Katie then says, did you speak to Sally? know she's out with her friends. Like mother, like daughter. Something along the lines of that. You now know that they're husband and wife. Essentially, again, you could argue, well, maybe if they're just friends. But John's bantering with Katie, like mother, like daughter. You now know that Sally is the daughter to Katie. Who is John? Now we can put two and two together and assume that he's the husband. But if not, who cares? There's going to be something else later on the line that proves us right or wrong. So that was a lot of waffle about something that's quite complicated, but also very basic. It's probably one of the areas of script writing that probably drives most writers up the wall with notes you get. So what I've devised here is 9 rules. Now, don't ask me why there's only 9 and not 10. Maybe the 10th rule is just keep on going. I don't know. Let's put that in. 10. Keep it going. That's just motivation, so I should put it in bold. So, number 1, keep it brief. Ironically, something I should do when I'm doing these videos. However, I think keep it brief is a very good rule. And I'm laughing because I'm probably going to be explaining it not in a brief manner. But I think what it means here and what I'm trying to get across when you're keeping it brief with exposition is if you want to reveal that it's a husband and wife situation, keep it brief. Don't play on the fact that they're husband and wife too much. Keep it brief equals keeping it natural. What would the conversation between a husband and wife in the kitchen realistically be about? You need to show that a husband and wife, maybe that's through dialogue or through a touch, as I say, kiss on the cheek, holding hands, cooking together, whatever it is. Whatever you do, keep it brief. Establish their husband and wife, then move on. Don't keep playing on the fact that you haven't kissed on the cheek. Oh yeah, but what if the audience don't know they're husband and wife? No, move it on. You know that. You know they're husband and wife. Let's say rule of 3. Do 3 things that establish their husband and wife. Anything more, it's bogging it down. It's going to come across as chunky exposition and get the reader and the audience viewer cringing at how over the top the writing is, purely trying to establish who these characters are, relationships to one another. Similar, rule number 2 here, exposition through dialogue. Now that was it's the rule which I basically just explained about having a character use the word, did you speak to mum? Now using the word mum implies that these 2 characters therefore have to be some sort of relation to one another, otherwise why are they calling the same person mum, essentially. However, exposition through dialogue can be on a greater scale. It can be 2 characters explaining the procedure of a bank robbery. Now, this is where you have to think about the situation that they're in. Logically, 2 bank robbers sitting in a van waiting to rob a bank, obviously. Would they be discussing the plan minutes before doing the robbery? Probably not. However, if they were to do it, you'd believe it. You could have bank robber 1 saying, right, let's do it. Let's go. Robber 1, just to double check. We all know our roles. Imagine someone saying that. Robber 2 says, yep. Robber 3, I'm the getaway driver. Robber 4, I'm on comms, whatever, So this little chat that they have him not only tells us the roles of the robber within this bank robbery they're about to do, but also has the potential to cause problems, because you could have robber 3 knowing that he's the getaway driver. If he falls asleep at the wheel, you know that he shouldn't supposed to do that because he's the getaway driver. Robber 4, who's on communications, now let's say that he doesn't turn his walkie-talkie on. We know how big of a deal that can be, even more so because he's purely stated that his role is to be on communications. So that exposition of job roles and their plan, they're bank robbers because they're discussing their roles before a bank robbery, and you can imagine them putting their balaclavas on and boom, away they go. Using genre tropes, similar to rule number 2, depending on what I mentioned about Looper being science fiction. Now, depending on the genre that you're writing in, the tropes that come along with that genre can also be used to help write exposition. So typically in Game of Thrones, because it's fantasy and it's epic battle scenes, before a big battle scene, the heads of the armies in real life as well, and that comes with World War II and anything. It doesn't have to be fantasy setting. They normally have to plan their war plan. So that gives you as the writer a perfect opportunity to have all these characters gathered in one room discussing the battle that's going to come ahead. You can have one character discussing who the enemy are, the White Walkers, whatever they're called. You could have another character discussing why the war is so important to win, because if you don't win the war, the armies of the dead are going to attack Hobbiton, etc., etc. So you've used the genre trope of people gathering in a room to discuss the war to actually tell the audience why the war is important and who the war is against. It's something that probably would be discussed in real life. However, if you are, if you were an army soldier in World War II gathered in a meeting room, you wouldn't have to have your commander keep saying that the reasons we need to win this war, guys, are so important because the Nazis are X, Y, and Z. It's pretty much a given that that's why you're there. However, for the purpose of the genre tropes, it allows you kind of an excuse to re-emphasize who you're fighting, why you're fighting, and where you're fighting. Exposition through character. This is through character motives. This is can be show don't tell. If you have a bit like when I was reviewing Wolf of Wall Street in episode 2, Jordan Belfort's character, his actions were so contradictory to what he was saying and what he was doing at the start towards the end of the first 10 pages. We know that his personality is one that he only, he's big-headed, he loves money, and that he told us, similar to this one, Breaking the Fourth Wall, that what his job role is, what's important in his life. However, if you take away the breaking the fourth wall element, you can have a character who, if he picks up his children from school, that they're his kids, that he's a family man. But if he picks up kids from school and he goes back, goes back home, but by the time he's home, the kids aren't with him. That he drops the kids off because he's not allowed custody. And then you walk inside his house, and the house is an absolute pigsty. There's cans of alcohol everywhere. There's drugs on the table. In those first opening minutes, bearing in mind exposition is mainly used at the start. We know that this character has kids. He's divorced. He can't see his kids during the week. Only picks them up from school briefly. Reason is because he's obviously an alcoholic or a drug problem. Because as soon as we walk into his house, we see all the evidence of this. You don't need any dialogue there. What's he going to do? Pick up a can of beer and say, "Oh, I miss you." It's over the top. You can have him purely walking into his flat, and because it's such a state with substances, the type of character he is. Number 6, reveal using flashbacks. Number 5, reveal exposition through conflict. Similar to pretty much all of them in terms of when you have either two characters arguing, exposition then is revealed about each other's motives, the storyline, etc. But also it's putting your character in a situation where they have to deal with something. So how would your character, who is, let's say, an alcoholic, deal with, the opening scene is an alcoholic guy getting sent to rehab. He's obviously going to have conflict because he doesn't want to go to rehab. What, in those moments of him being dragged through the doors of the rehab building, could he be saying? he could be screaming something like, "You never loved me, mum, ever since dad died, blah, 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 blah." Again, be careful how you write it, but you're giving a reason for the character to scream out exposition. And I think that's what is kind of key here for rule number 5. Rule number 6, reveal using flashbacks. So some films do it brilliantly. It's either flashbacks way back when they're children, and their actions of them now as an adult are explained or excused for what they're like when they were a kid, or it could be flashback to an hour ago, to a week ago. But it basically it's having a character saying something like, "Do you remember when I dated that girl?" Now, rather than having the character explain to his mate the character, because it's a film or television show, you have the ability and the tool at your disposal to physically cut back to a period of time where this guy is with the girl. Not only is it great visual and can kind of chop up your timeline a little bit to make it a bit more interesting and enjoyable watching experience. It also it can reveal more because you're showing the audience and not telling them, and that is the key rule. Maybe that should be rule 11. Show, don't tell. Which is why when you reveal using flashbacks, you are showing the audience a situation rather than having another character tell the other character about what he just got up to. Rule number 7, breaking the fourth wall. Very self-explanatory. Wolf of Wall Street. Anyone who looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall of that barrier between audience and the cinema screen is breaking the fourth wall. You're basically getting inside the character's head. The character can say something to the audience and not have anyone else in the scene know what he's thinking, because he's the only one who's aware that he's being filmed. And that's not in terms like a mockumentary style like The Office. This can be used in drama. This is a character turned into the camera and saying one thing to someone in the moment, then saying something to us as the audience, which perhaps contradicts what he's just said. It's basically a way of being in on the joke, in on the secret, in on the moment. And you're not just a spectator, but you're almost along with the main character. Rule number 8, reveal information with title cards. Fairly self-explanatory. That is, I don't want to save it, I'm afraid. That is pretty much at the start of a film, it will say where the location is, the year, and pretty much maybe a time, as in like 2 hours before. But that would look like this. You have, let's say, New York, 1945. That would actually come up visually. So you don't have to work out for yourself as the audience where it's set, because they're telling you. If you don't have this, it's fine. Not films like The Godfather don't do it, because you can just take a guess of, right, well, they're driving certain cars, they're looking a certain way, they're talking in a certain way. Therefore, I assume that the year is blah, 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 and I assume it's set here. However, if you want to be very, very precise and not have any doubts with the audience, just boom, straight away, right at the start, say where it's set, when it's set. And our last rule, apart from these 2 ones, are reveal through montage. Now, montage can be a bit gimmicky, a bit 80s. Picture Rocky where he's working out. You know, it has multiple scenes where it's like, Rocky, you need to get in shape, but I've only got 24 hours. Well, you best get moving. And then in those scenes that follow in, it's a bunch of quick, snappy 10 seconds of him doing weights, him running. Usually it's contradictory. So at the start he runs up a hill but is out of breath. Then in the middle he's kind of like struggling, then falters. But always the montage always ends on something then which is him achieving it. So Rocky being able to run all the way up to the stairs to the top, whereas at the start he's struggling. It's a great way of running through a time frame. So 24 hours is quite short, but let's say a week. We don't actually want to see 7 lots of 24 hours of him going to the gym. So it's, Rocky, you need to get in shape. you've got a fight next Saturday. I've only got 7 days. Let's get going. Brrr. Montage of him working out, struggling, getting better, working out, struggling, getting better. Then finally he gets better. Then the next scene is a normal scene minutes before the fight starts. You know that the film and the timeline has skipped 7 days without you actually having to witness 7 days worth of events in 7-day time frames as such. So that is what a montage is. Again, they're very 80s. You don't really tend to see them these days too much, unless obviously a film is trying to kind of emulate and copy that 80s style. Because I reckon out of all the rules, reveal through montage, reveal using flashbacks and breaking the fourth wall, they're the ones, and probably, so to be fair, these 4, I would say be careful. These are the types of rules where only certain directors and writers get away with it. Scorsese, Tarantino, etc. They do it and no one says anything. That's no shade against them. That's just a fact that until you have established your own writing style, including these 4 rules into your writing can be quite risky unless it's done very, very well. However, these rules here, I would say, apply to any script, regardless of how good you are as a writer. These are the ones that, if you can't master, then I would say that your writing's going to suffer hugely, because they're the ones that, as I said, can be revealed in simple ways. Just to have the odd character say "mum" shows you relationship status. However, these lot, they're more filmmaking techniques. When we did the review of The Wolf of Wall Street, we noticed that he had flashbacks. He actually had pretty much all of these. So you just goes to see that how brilliant Terence Winter managed to write Wolf of Wall Street using these. He also used these because using genre tropes, it's big money, flashy. We can show he's rich. Exposition through character, that similarly seeps into breaking the fourth wall. Exposition through dialogue, again breaking the fourth wall. Keeping it brief, again, what did we just learn in 10 pages of Wolf of Wall Street, all about Jordan Belfort's life? In literally 11 pages, you know everything. And I think they are the ones that can either make you a good writer or show that you are not there just yet. So I'd say that these are the top 11 rules, bearing in mind. These rules are just ones to keep you going, so we can delete them. Let's say that are for pros. So you guys over here, for script writing for beginners for episode 3, need to focus on these ones. Number 1, keeping it brief. Apologies because this video isn't brief. Rule number 2, exposition through dialogue. Rule number 3, using genre tropes. Rule number 4, exposition through character. And number 5, reveal exposition through conflict.